The TV tower in Tashkent that everyone raves about um, is located. It's along the subway line. Goodness, where is it? It is up here, right here. And in fact, if you look at the satellite view, the subway line actually comes above ground for that portion. And it's between two stations. I think the best way to look at it is on the map that's currently available on Wikipedia. So it's between these two stations here. Um, so you can get off at either one and just walk between them. I got off at one and walked to it, and then walked. I think I walked all the way down to this one here because it's pretty decent walk. It was a nice day as well. But yeah, very easy to find. So the TV tower is something I saw come up like a number of times when it comes to like tourist things to do. Keep in mind that like the observation portion of the tower is not quite as high as the tower itself. You know, like any tower, but this is considerably different. Wikipedia states that it's at 318 feet, and the whole tower is like 1,200 feet. Either way, like it's not a horrible place to go to. It's just when I went there, I was there for probably less than an hour. The cost to go up was, and I meant to keep track of this because their website is terrible, and I couldn't find it anywhere there. Um, but I believe it was about $5 US. They were pretty heavy on the models of different towers around the world, and I remember being a bit frustrated that I hadn't seen the CN Tower after all these models, but I did eventually find it up at the observation tower. So one personal observation that I like to share is that I feel like in the Soviet Union and other places, they focus heavily on the significance of TV and radio towers because I believe that in North America, at least, I'm not super familiar with Western Europe, that we jumped to cable for TV pretty quickly, and we relied on that and sort of gave up on transmission over air. Whereas, like, it seems like in the Soviet Union that they relied heavily on it, and it almost kind of reminds me of how in Africa they not everyone had a landline up, and then when cell service came out, it seems like now more people would have a cell. They sort of jumped the technology in the same way that North America sort of quickly abandoned TV over the air and went to cable. Whereas in the Soviet Union, they seem to have much more significance on the importance of these towers. And so, yeah, anyway, the observation tower, you can see they got a small cafe here, and you can go around it. And in this whole video, I believe I do circle the whole thing. And the views are pretty good. I went on a good day. You can see the mountains and stuff like that. There aren't a lot of other opportunities as a tourist to see things from such a height. So, I think it's a reasonable use of time. Additionally, they did have a restaurant there. And I went there and I poured over the menu and I decided what I was going to get. And then I was told that they only were serving coffee, tea, and dessert. And not a lot of explanation as to why. I don't know. Maybe I missed lunch and it was too early for dinner or something like that. But yeah, so I just sort of left. So the second thing I wanted to bring up was Ashkhabad Park. And it's named similarly to Ashkhabad, which is in Turkmenistan, and there is a relation there. That I read somewhere that the park was some sort of way of recognizing the good relationship of Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, and the style does sort of resemble that. However, when I went there, I found that there were sort of two sides to the park. But anyway, the location is right off this subway station, and I'll show the map later. But when you get off the subway, you have to walk up this road, and then I believe you can cut in somewhere here. But either way, it's a 10 or 15 minute walk. And then I'll turn on satellite view. So what I was sort of referring to is this portion of the park does have a sort of Turkmenistan look, but it was actually kind of not very popular, I want to say. And a majority of the people in the action were on this side of the park, which had sort of a look and feel that I had seen a number of times before, with sort of children's rides and games and food and stuff like that. But anyway, I also show it on the subway map because that's the easiest way sometimes to look at it. So yeah, it's basically right here, and that's the stop you want to get off at. This is the one with the train station. Then of course these are more, maybe you're more familiar with them as they're sort of the downtown location. So pretty easy to get to. So of course, all great parks start with an escalator ride down, and this one is no exception. Quality Ivy as well. You can sort of see the decadence of what you might find. Certainly, what I've seen in pictures of Turkmenistan. My understanding is that the leader of Turkmenistan has a pretty good fascination with horses, so they've been sure to include that as well. And then this sort of opulence of these, arches and gold trim and everything like that. But, it is a nice park to go to, especially if you don't like crowds, because this was in mid-March in 2022. It was pretty empty. The whole park was pretty quiet, but especially this portion of it. Baskin Robbins there, that is one of the few franchises in Central Asia. The only other ones I saw were, as I've mentioned before, KFC, and there is a Wendy's downtown. But yeah, there are a few Baskin Robbins locations as well. But all of the action, if you want to call it that, is sort of the other half. It too was quite slow, and it's. I don't think it's not free to enter. You have to pay like about $1 to get in, and then all of the rides are anywhere from like $1 to $3. I did go on the Ferris wheel, and the Ferris wheel, I want to say it was like $2, and basically you go around it once because it's more of an observation type wheel than sort of a fast moving Ferris wheel. But obviously, it's another good way to get a good view of the city, and in fact it was something that I could see from the place I was staying on the 7th floor. As soon as the sun went down, you could see the lights from it. They also have a food court as well, because they have food outside. You can eat outside. There's sort of vendors there, and then they have this food court. I just imagine in the summer or on the weekend or what have you, it's a little busier, but obviously very modern in that pizza place, which I saw repeatedly. And then shortly afterwards, the sun went down. Of course, it looks, fairly cool with all the lights on. But I think even more people had left by then because it was even quieter. But it's pretty easy to get to. It's next to nothing to go there. Take some pictures, have some dinner, take it in. So I'd recommend it. So lastly, I'm just going to talk briefly about the subway system. It's a pretty typical subway system that started in the 70s. You pay cash or you can buy a card, which I did buy, and it came with about 5 rides, but I couldn't refill it because they don't take MasterCard. They take sort of a proprietary method of payment online, and so I just ended up paying, it's about 14 cents to ride it, and you just go up to the window, you just give them the money, and they give you this little barcode on a piece of paper. You just scan it and throw it out after. But it's sort of typical to most subway systems. There is transfers within the subway. You can't transfer to a bus or what have you once you get out. But the key thing to remember is that when you get down to the station, there's going to be a mix of Cyrillic and Latin. And there's Latin on the wall. If there's no train, you can see it. And it will show you the stop, and then to the left or the right, depending on the direction of the train, it will show you what stops are coming, and then if there's transfers to another line, it will list all of those stations as well. And that's the best way to understand which side of the platform to be on, is if, you know, obviously if the station you're going to is on that list, because it won't show you previous stations. And then they're all going to be in the Latin alphabet. Whereas when you get on the train, depending on how old the train is, the map and the language, like whether it's the alphabet, whether it's Cyrillic or Latin, will vary. And then on the newer systems, it's even greater. It's hilarious. They will have this elaborate map of the subway that they anticipate building. And they are building it. It's just that there are so many stations on there that don't exist. So that basically is the center line. Right now, it's just 7 stations, and that's March 2022. It's just 7 stations, and it doesn't even represent. It doesn't look like a line that would encircle the city. It just is an extension of one of the lines, and it can be a bit confusing to see both maps that are outdated and that they don't have the correct number of stations on them in one direction, and then maps that have too many stations that don't exist. But, you know, who knows? Presumably, like, if you look at this in 5 years from now, maybe all those stations will exist, and maybe they'll change the signage. So if you have a look at the map here, this is a map that's on the newest subway line. And the newest subway line is this circular one on the outside. However, the only stations that currently exist are these ones. So it just looks like an extension to this line, the blue one here. And when you get to this station, you do have to get off. You have to go up because it's all above grade, and you have to wait for the train to come. So it's an added sort of hassle. Like, it did take like 10 or 15 minutes. And then the only thing that's available is these stations. They will show you this map on the subway line, and it will include stations 8 through 15, and then 16 through 23, 25, 20, 30, all the way around to here. They, at the time of 2022 in March, they didn't exist. But when they do create those 25 odd stations, the map will be all ready to go. But so you can understand why they call it the center line, or sorry, what do they call it? The circular line or something like that? The circle line, because eventually it will be a circle. But for now, it's just an extension of this. What you see on here is like a light blue, and it's clearly very new as well. And they're all above grade, and you get to, you know, have a good look at the city as you go by. But don't anticipate the other ones. And like I said, if you take a very old train in the older part of the subway station, you might see that it's missing stations on the map. So there's a nice healthy mix of old and new, and it makes for an entertaining journey. So hopefully this discussion on these 3 topics has been helpful. If you're looking to go to Tashkent for a trip, I would recommend it. It's good fun, place seems safe, and it's not very cliche, is it? I have other videos on Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan. Feel free to check them out. Yeah, and thanks for watching.